introduce you formally to Jon Gibbons. He is board-certified intellectual property attorney, licensed to practice in front of U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. He is a co-founder in one of the largest intellectual property firms in the Southeast. He's a licensed professional in electrical engineering and a former college software programming and automation professor. By the way, you went to UM, right? You went to University of Miami Law School, from what I remember. That's awesome. So here we go. Law degree from the University of Miami. He attended Franklin Pierce Law School Center Intellectual Property Summer Institute. He earned an MS, graduate degree in electrical engineering from Syracuse, I was just there, and a BS degree in electrical engineering from Rutgers University. Please welcome Jon. He's done a great job trying to prepare for the class today, giving us his time. So, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have only 3 questions or so after his session, and then we're having another speaker, and then we'll take a 5-minute break, and then you'll get to ask him more questions. But when you do ask questions, keep them general, not too specific. Thank you, Jon.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Gert. I just want to echo congratulations to all of you. This is really difficult to do. You will become smarter than 99% of the people who deal with businesses when you go through this course. So I want to congratulate you. This is not easy stuff. My goal is to take all of the learning that you have and simplify it. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide. Back. One more slide. I want you to learn everything you need to know about intellectual property, and you're just going to have a hard time following me. You're going to move a lot. From a can of Coke. And I'm really lucky because a lot of you are my age or older. So we're going to go through this because the first part I'm going to talk about is patents. This presentation is a lot more interesting if it's interactive and you ask questions that are quick and general. Don't ask specific. I can talk to you about that later. Who knows the patent on the can of Coke? Anybody want to shout it out?
No patent.
From the top. It is the pop top. Who's old enough to remember the pull top? You pulled it off, you threw it on the ground, and you're lucky enough to get a Coke in the summer, and cut your foot. The pop top keeps the metal on, it's more hygienic, and it reduces pollution. It's an expired patent, but there's a patent on the pop top. Patents not only cover structure and function, they can cover design. I'm supposed to give you some of my life experiences here. If you go up the turnpike or go to any airport and you see some of those bags that say Miami in different fonts and bold, there's a design patent on that. That happened to be a client of ours. Did very well. He's doing it for all the different cities. Design patents are able to just cover ornamental design. It's not anything except how something looks. So it's very good for certain types of industries. We talked about the patent. Let's talk about the next thing. Everybody gets this. Branding or trademark. What's the brand for this can? Coca-Cola, thank you. Coca-Cola is one of the most valuable brands in the world. However, trademarks are not limited to words. They can be colors. They can be sound. Anybody hear the NBC tunes when they used to do that for the Peacock? Boom, boom, boom. Anybody listen to a Windows machine start? Very different than other types of computers. So sound can be a brand. The cute little icon when Pixar starts, I love that lamp. That's a trademark. So I have a patent. This is all what Anita told you. This is all what Jon told you. Trademark. A trademark can also cover color. Everybody knows what the Tiffany box looks like. People who are tool people, and I'm a person who likes to work with my hands, DeWalt does not look like Ryobi. Different colors, and it's purposeful. Patent. Trademark. Trade secret. What's the trade secret you learned? The ingredients, the formula, that's it. So in your lowly can of Coke, you got the patent, you got the trademark, you have the trade secret. In Florida law, to have a trade secret, and in most state law, you need two things. It's got to give you the business value. You keep it a secret. You don't tell anybody. University of Florida, Nina Rao, who's a dear friend of mine, mentioned if they do anything with you, they put you under a confidentiality agreement. That's so you can share trade secrets. Patent, trademark, trade secret, copyright. Thank you. The copyright is probably one of my weakest examples in this, but let me go with it. It's arrangement, selection, and presentation, copyright's expression of the fonts, colors, shapes, and words on the can. So you could describe your can and all your ingredients, and they don't describe all the ingredients, by the way, in a different way than somebody else. Copyright covers exact copying. I want you to think about it that way. So patent, trademark, trade secret, copyright. I'd like to go one more with that. And Anita mentioned it. Contract law. Under contract law, you bring that all together. You have contracts for developers, you have contracts for end user license, contracts for distributors. Different contracts do different things. You can license a patent under a contract, you can license a trademark under a contract. Contract law what brings this all together. So next time you get a can of Coke, and I see people now do this, they can think about how to apply those 5 areas of intellectual property. I'm going to answer questions later. I'm going to go on. And all this is my experience. This is me taking what you're learning and putting it through a slightly different lens so I can help simplify it, so it helps you apply to what you're doing. What you're doing is really tough, and I applaud you for it. You have to apply the different concepts and learn how to do it. The next slide, please. Best part of this, these are my commercialization evaluation factors. I have 4 of them. You have these slides. Intellectual property, technology factors, market factors, team factors. Let's go on to the first one. So, patent factor evaluation. My experience, when you look at something, is it something that has value from a patent? And it's a hard question as somebody who's not trained in it to answer, but this will help you a little bit. Do you need other patents to do it? That's what Anita was talking about with freedom to operate. If you're building a product in a space that doesn't have a lot of other products in, you may not. But most products are improvements on other products out there. You may need to worry about that. That's called freedom of operate. Essential versus non-essential. An essential patent is something that you cannot get around. There's very few of those. But I can tell you a couple success stories with that. One of them is through UF, through a semiconductor company. UF invented a way to use chaos in semiconductors. It hasn't been done before for reconfiguring computers. And you cannot really get in that market without this patent. It's a fundamental patent in the area. So it's a very valuable patent to them if they can get it to work. Signature. What I want you to think about that is how easy is it to find if someone's infringing your patent. One of my experiences with that is I worked for a satellite company while I was an engineer. And if anybody knows anything about chip design and semiconductor, I want you to think of a birthday cake with multiple layers. That's the way semiconductors work. You have layers of different materials that do conductive and non-conductive things, including metal. Well, they wanted to see if somebody was infringing one of their chips. So they hired a room full of people, about 40 people total, to sit at microscopes, rub away each layer of the cake, and write down what they saw to see if they saw something being done. Think about the expense to determine if someone is infringing your patent to do that. Very expensive. You have to pay 30 people a year's salary to sit there with microscopes. As opposed to what Samsung and Apple, Freudian slip because it's really Google and Apple, are fighting with whether the swipe or the pinch on a screen is patentable. It's pretty easy to go to a show and see those type of patents versus having to etch away at a computer chip. So patents, when you're looking at it, is it something that is easy to see? Will it be in your product? People sometimes license patents and they don't use them. Not very wise investment because you don't need it, or maybe you're trying to do some other business. Next slide, please. So the technology factors. Is the scientific basis understood? If you're getting into technology where you can't describe it in a bumper sticker, that may be tough for you to sell. I have a friend who took over a company in Boynton Beach that makes odor reduction machinery that uses ozone to help with it. I'm not a chemist, I don't play one on TV, but I know ozone can be harmful. They have a hard time explaining to people the process of it, but they're saving household beer companies $1 million a month on cleaning bottles before they fill them with beer. They have all sorts of market success, they just can't get that bumper sticker out there, and investors don't know how to deal with them. A great problem to have, but you can't fit it on a bumper sticker. Is the technology well developed? I told you about that semiconductor company out of UF. They didn't start in the space they were trying. They had patents trying to be over here. The market changed. Security became really important in computer networks because everybody's getting hacked. Their technology actually works really well in the security area because you can't tell the machine behind it how it works. So they're able to change it with the market. Team has the development capabilities, and this was spoken about by John Engel in the beginning. You see this all the time with very famous startups. Bill Gates needed Steve Ballmer to help him run that company better. I saw it with a local company. Went to visit them when I was just starting up my firm. They had the typical used furniture in a 100-foot office space with 3 of them, asking to do some work. But the founder was smart enough as he started getting going to fire himself as a CEO. He realized he was not the chief executive type. He brought in a younger guy than him who took the company from a 4-person company to a 200-person company, sold it to Quest Software, and then sold it to Dell. So know what you need for your team with your doing that. That's your technology factors. Next slide, please. Is the need well defined? If you look at some things in this, when they invented the lousy glue for Post-it, they didn't know the market. He failed at his experiment. He did not know he was going to make a multi-million-dollar market with bad glue. It was a bad experiment. He solved the problem later on. Does it address the need? Do you know the need that your problem is trying to solve? Again, think of the bumper sticker. If you can't get it to that, there's a problem. Is the market large and growing? Everybody wants to be in a market that's growing because there's better opportunity. Is the time to market relatively short? That semiconductor company I spoke about a couple times, they still are not at market. They're getting investors in, but that's 5 or 6 years, as opposed to someone who may have an app for a phone or that design patent for the Fort Lauderdale or Miami names. They're on market within a couple months. So it depends on what you're doing. Is the profit margin high? It can be. It depends, again, as I said, any legal question you can answer with, it depends. This depends on the industry. Can you get investments? You're learning through this, and investments come in lots of different flavors. You have great mentors sitting with you. But sometimes the early investors are people who are just family and friends to help you out. Can you get that? Is it close enough to do it? Or do you need $1 million to get it to market? Next slide, please. The team factors. Do you have the right people on your team? Going back to that startup out of Pompano Beach, he realized he was not a CEO person. He needed to bring it in. Another startup in Boca that I represent, 2 people in a room. They were successful in prepaid phone cards. Talk about a business that's kind of strange and dead now. They morphed into a company, but realized they needed technical depth. These both were business people. They did not have the technical depth. They asked around, who wants to be in a startup? Who's the best programmer around? They got an answer a couple times for the same name in their community. And this gentleman goes, I don't want to be in a startup. I've been in them. They're a lot of work. It's a lot of things to do. Glad he stuck with it, because now that company is a 500-person company, and all of them are doing very well. So there are capabilities you need to have. Are you willing to put the time in? This may be a part-time thing for you. That's okay, admit it. Make your timeline adjust accordingly. Or is this what you're doing forever? Are you doing are you able to, for a year, survive on what you're doing? Think about that. What are your expectations? Can you meet those expectations? Sandy talked about that a little bit, answering the questions that you were taught by Anita Rao, is make your milestones and things like that. Are there milestones that you can meet? Because investors want to see it. Play well together. If you're not the type A personality, do you want to be with the type A personality? I could never have worked for Steve Jobs after reading his novel. The guy was really tough. He didn't shower. He didn't share any of the early profits with anybody. He didn't pay a lot of people. He neglected his first wife, didn't talk to his daughter for 20 years, but a brilliant mind. You have to understand, do you play well with that person? I have clients that are brilliant that have asked me to join them. I will not. I choose that I don't want to work with that personality. Other people thrive in that environment. Make sure you play well together. So I want you to take the 4 factors I told you, intellectual property, technology, market, team, and bring your ideas into this little group. Is it something you can do? Is it something you commercialize? That's the way I look at commercialization. Next slide, please. These are my closing thoughts. I've started a couple companies and I started a firm. It's hard. I really applaud what all of you are doing. When I started my firm, I went to my wife and told her what I wanted to do. For a year, we lived off of credit cards. She was working, but I lived off of credit cards. I had some partners who were more well-to-do than I was. They were putting money in, but I lived off of credit cards. I had a business plan. We talked about that. The business plan showed that I was on track to make this work. And by November, it did the first year. So make sure that you have the support of family and loved ones, because this is really tough. Look for things like universities. Anita talked about this. They're a great source of innovation. Look to see if you can sell back to the government. Whether it's military, I represent some people who make army clothes for special forces. Nice little niche. He's always going to have orders. If it's infrastructure, I represent people who do some road work. Again, typically the government spending money back. Interesting businesses, because you typically have that. I represent someone who makes tents for the military. That was really big when we started up in certain areas. The other thing I want to encourage you is use government information. You pay for it. Government generally can't own copyrights. So all the government information you can reuse. Google uses government information to enhance its maps. It uses government information to know different things and do it. Google has a translation page that goes from Spanish to English, English to Spanish, Arabic to French. When you do that, one of the things you need to worry about is, do you have good verifiable sources of translation to learn it? What did Google do? They used all the UN documents that have to be certified, translated in 7 different languages as their base. They paid nothing for it. Brilliant. Be ready to fire yourself. That's really important. If you are the person who's the spark and you have it, be ready to fire yourself. I try to ask myself every day, the different things I'm involved in, is there somebody else in the group who can do what I can do? If so, I shouldn't be doing it. I should be doing something that only I can do. Because then I can rise to a different level and work on something else that maybe they can't do. And that's hard. Sometimes, especially in startups, you wear every hat. You do everything. And my last closing thought with that is, Elon Musk, the guy who founded turn-by-turn navigation, PayPal, Tesla, and SpaceX, just to recommend a couple. His first startup with his brother, 60 Minutes did this on Sunday night. He slept in the office. He didn't have a house. He didn't have a hotel room. He got up and went to the Y to shower before his employees came in so they wouldn't know that he slept in the office. That's dedication. That's dedication. Thank you.
Can you hear me? We have a few minutes for, let's take some 3 questions or so. Please keep them generic. Remember, he'll be available afterwards for questions. Thanks. Over here. Oh, okay.
Can you please talk a little bit about the differences? You talk about the differences of the pricing between the different options you would want to do. Like copyright, I know is around $30, but patent could be different.
Thank you. So let's talk about 5 areas of intellectual property, quick pricing to give you a guideline. That was the question. And what's the law school answer? Quick things. You can file a copyright for $35 at copyright.gov. You can file a trademark for $325 at uspto.gov. That's a federal trademark. Florida, it's $85 at Department of Commerce. You can file trade secrets. There's no filing. The requirement is to market confidential. Only share it as under contracts. Contracts, I can't give you a generic price because it depends. Patents. File a provisional patent for yourself for $125. You'll get an attorney involved. It will cost you a couple thousand and up. I hope that answered. Next question.
Right here.
Looking at the past business plans was put out in the fall, and so my question is, because we're going to be going to UCF and finding out, what they want from us to have a patent and a license. So when is it, or how do we know if they're asking for too much initial payment up front from us?
What's the law school answer? There is no rule of thumb. It depends on the technology. It depends how desperate they are. How long have they had the patent?
7 years.
Oh, I will let you come to your own conclusion. The other thing is it a patent where there's a lot of profit margin and that is required for it? Medical devices have tons of profit margin. If it's required for it, you need that patent, that may be worth more. As opposed to something where it is a small improvement. The royalty rates for patents go from less than 1% on the way to 30 or 40. Most are a couple percent of the selling price. There's a royalty rate. So now to answer your question a little bit more, and I'm going to stop in a second, is how do you look at that stream? Is it front-end loaded, prepaid against royalties? Is it back-end loaded? It depends. Depends.
So when you have
I'll talk to you later. All right?
All right, we have time for one more then.
Oh, how many types of copyrights exist?
That's an interesting question. I'm going to answer it this way. Copyright protects music, both the writer and the sound engineer. So if the gentleman up there working on the mixing board wanted to have a copyright, he actually does by the way he's doing it. He could make me sound like Beyonce. That's a separate copyright, it's a Circle P. Most people don't know that. Look at that on the DVD or CD when you go home. Sculpture, writing, computer code. I'm trying to think of other areas. Collections of photographs. Basically, artistic endeavors, but for computer programming. I'll call that literature. That's what they call it. I hope that answered your question. So there's one type of copyright, it's just what does it protect? And copyright protects those different areas.
Yeah, it was her question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's it. All right, well, thank you. Thank you very much. He's done an excellent job. All right, so we've got